Today, we're talking about the most brilliant and perhaps the most self-destructive mind chess has ever seen. We're talking about Bobby Fischer. He took on the most disciplined minds on Earth, all without an army. He broke a decades-long Soviet chess machine with nothing more than a checkered board. And then, right at the absolute pinnacle of his power, he just vanished. This is the unbelievable story of Bobby Fischer. So, our story starts with Fischer's childhood, which was, to put it mildly, isolated. We're going to explore how this all-consuming obsession with chess really forged a one-of-a-kind genius. Fischer's entire journey began in solitude. At just 6 years old, he taught himself how to play from instructions he found in a chess set he bought at a candy store. When his sister got bored, he had no one else to play with, so he became his own opponent, just devouring old game books with an intensity that went way beyond a simple hobby. His rise was, well, meteoric barely does it justice. He didn't just compete against men who were decades older than him, he absolutely demolished them. By the time he was done, he'd captured 8 U.S. championships, one of them with a perfect 11-0 score. That's a feat that has never been achieved before or since. His focus was just total. And that singular focus was about to put him on a collision course with an entire empire. See, for decades, the Soviet Union had used chess as propaganda, as proof of their intellectual superiority. And now this lone American kid was challenging their complete and total dominance. On his way to the world title, Fischer went on a winning streak that it completely stunned the chess world. He wasn't just winning matches. He was taking apart the world's best players in a way that just seemed impossible. As the former champion Mikhail Botvinnik put it was like miracles had begun. First, in the candidates tournament, he just annihilates Soviet Grandmaster Mark Taimanov with a perfect 6-0 score. You have to understand, a shutout like this, it's basically unheard of at the highest levels of chess, where so many games end in a draw. And then, incredibly, as if to prove it wasn't some kind of fluke, he did it again. He repeated the exact same feat against another elite player, Danish Grandmaster Bent Larsen. Another 6-0 victory. This was clearly a player who was operating on a completely different plane of existence. This historic 20-game winning streak gave him an ELO rating of 2,785. That's a staggering 125 points ahead of the reigning world champion Boris Spassky. Now, to put that into perspective for you, today, the gap between the world's #1 player and the #20 player is less than 125 points. The gap between Fischer and #2 was a chasm. So the 1972 World Championship in Reykjavik, Iceland, it was way more than just a chess match. It was a full-blown Cold War showdown. You had Fischer, with just a single assistant, facing off against not just Spassky, but the entire state-sponsored Soviet chess machine. The match started like a complete disaster for him. He lost the first game, then he forfeited the second one over a ridiculous dispute about TV cameras. But in a really amazing show of sportsmanship, Spassky actually agreed to Fischer's demands to continue the match. And from there, Fischer staged one of the most masterful comebacks in sports history, winning the match and ending 25 years of Soviet dominance. He had done it. He had achieved his life's one single goal. But after the victory, after the war was won, the very same mind that brought him to the pinnacle of the world began to turn on itself. The world expected a long, long reign from the new champion. But instead, Fischer's paranoia and his erratic behavior, which, had always been there under the surface, it really started to escalate. The same mind that could calculate 20 moves ahead on a chessboard, it couldn't escape the battles that were raging inside of it. When it came time to defend his title in 1975 against Anatoly Karpov, Fischer issued this series of rigid, non-negotiable demands to the International Chess Federation, FIDE. He insisted the match be the first to 10 wins, that draws wouldn't count, but it was his final condition that became the real sticking point. You see, FIDE rejected his condition that he would automatically keep the title if the match ended in a 9-9 tie. They saw it as a completely unfair advantage. Fischer's response? He just refused to play. He forfeited his world champion title by default, walking away from the game at the absolute peak of his powers. And with that, he was gone. Fischer disappeared from public life entirely. It was the beginning of a long and really tragic descent into isolation and conflict with the very world that had once celebrated him. For nearly 20 years, Fischer just vanished. He became a total recluse. He only surfaced in these bizarre public incidents, like in 1981 when he was arrested because his disheveled appearance led police to mistake him for a bank robber. Then in 1992, he suddenly re-emerged for a multi-million-dollar rematch against his old rival Spassky. But there was a huge problem. The match was being held in Yugoslavia, which was under a strict UN embargo. When the U.S. Treasury warned him not to play, Fischer held a press conference, put the official letter on a table, and publicly spat on it. That single act made him a fugitive from his own country.
He never went back to America. In 2004, he was arrested in Japan for using a revoked U.S. passport. After 9 months locked up in a prison, he was granted citizenship by Iceland, the very country where he had become a global icon. And that's where he lived until he died in 2008, at age 64.
So, how are we supposed to remember a man who was both a cultural hero and, at the same time, a deeply troubled pariah? His legacy is just one of profound duality. On one hand, you have the genius who revolutionized chess and put it on the front page of every newspaper. On the other, you have a man who is consumed by this fierce antisemitism, despite his own Jewish heritage, and by extremist paranoia, to the point that he publicly celebrated the 9/11 attacks. Bobby Fischer proved that one man could, in fact, defeat an empire. But he also proved that genius, when it's untethered from stability, can turn inward and completely destroy itself. His story leaves us with a question that's as complex as one of his games. Was he a hero? A villain? Or was he simply a mind too powerful for the world that created it?